Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Hello and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we have a very special guest, and her name is Melanie Murphy Richter, and she's a dynamic registered dietitian nutritionalist. And I had to say that slow and carefully because there's a lot of words there. And she's also the 2023 recognized Young Dietitian of the Year by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. As Director of Communications and Medical Science Educator at El Nutra, she drives the company's mission to promote health through evidence-based nutrition. Melanie is also a graduate instructor at UC Irvine, where she mentors future healthcare professionals. Founder of Holistic Ritual, and she combines science-backed nutrition with holistic healing. She's been featured in Forbes, USA Today, Men's Health, and more. Well, that's quite an intro. Melanie, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here. Happy to have this combo with you.
Well, this is good. I come from a place where all the things I just learned by doing and trying and reading and all the old-fashioned ways, and had a few teachers along the way. But you jumped in and you got into the classic educational side of things. I like that. That means people are being taught and learning some things aside from what gets handed to us on a plate through media. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what brought you to this line?
Yeah. So it's funny you say that because even though I am traditionally trained as a dietitian and I have my degree in that world, there's so much that we don't learn in going to dietetic school. So I feel like I started my second round of dietetic exploration once I graduated and did a lot of self-learning and training on my own through different institutes and things like that. But I actually, dietetics is my second life. I was originally in healthcare PR for about 10 years prior to this. And it's an interesting part of my story because at the time I was suffering from really bad IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. I was really even though I was super successful in this other line of work, I was miserable, didn't like it. I was holding on to lots of inflammatory weight. And I remember waking up one day and thinking, I simply can't live my life this way. And I was like, what do I love? What lights me up? What brings me passion? And I food has always, since I was a little girl, food and nutrition have been, I've always been fascinated by how food can impact your ability to be well, to also to you, it can impact your body in so many different ways. And I've always been fascinated by that. So I decided to go get my master's. I was like, I'm quitting everything. I'm doing something completely different, and went to go get my master's. I wanted to go to an integrated school that was a more holistic, if you will, in terms of what types of modalities they teach. And University of Southern California has the one and only Longevity Institute in the U.S. run by Dr. Walter Longo, originally founded by him. And so I went, and now I have my master's degree in longevity and health span from USC. And since I've graduated, I've kind of specialized in both gut health as a root for so many different chronic diseases. And so most of my patients, even if they come with non-gut related, traditional gut related symptoms, the gut is where I start with most of my patients. And I would say longevity is also my other main focus in my world, and helping people to live in healthy bodies for as long as humanly possible.
Well, you've tapped into some very powerful areas of the health world. First of all, food, in just about any tradition that is health related would recognize food as the first medicine. And, it affects everything you do. It affects your health. It affects your lack of health. It affects your sleep. It affects your stress levels, your inflammation, your cortisol, everything.
Yep.
And so as you get to understand that, you realize that's all tied up. And then fairly recently, in the last maybe 10 years, the importance of gut health has really come to light. And well, guess what the gut deals with? Food. And
Yep.
then again, in the last probably 10 years, longevity has become sort of in vogue. And I think as all these boomers are getting older, they're the ones with the money. They're like, hey, why don't we live longer? And they're sponsoring, figuring out how to make this stuff happen. And people are jumping in and really digging deep. Technology is helping. The information generation is pivotal. When I started studying herbs, that was 40 years ago. There was no computers. So I had to go to used bookstores and, buy old books and read them and then compare them to all the other books. And none of them agreed to with each other. And I had to like sort of find my way. And nowadays,
The old-fashioned way.
yeah, nowadays you can look at peer-reviewed studies and you can, see this person did all this work and I can just scoop the cherry off of it. And that person
Yep.
did all this work. So it's really remarkable that you've chosen these three areas because they're pivotal in just that broad-reaching word health.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that drove or has driven me is the realization in working with my patients over the past uh, decade or so. I've realized that most of us are living in bodies that aren't functioning 100%. Most of us are functioning at like 70%.
Those are the ones that think they're healthy.
And those are the ones that think that they're healthy. I know it's crazy because I know having gone through my experience with IBS and really reaching a pretty deep low in my health many years ago. I consider it such a gift though, because I don't think that I would have made change had I not had this really catastrophic health experience. So I thank my lucky stars because now I know what 100% feels like. And I don't know that I would have gotten there had I not, taken this harder path. But the reason this is so fascinating is that we're in the longevity in world, we're living longer lives because, medicine has helped to keep us alive longer, but we're not living in healthier bodies for those years.
Right.
And that's like, who wants that? Who wants to live longer in a body that can't, get up or that aches and pains? And, it doesn't make sense to me that our focus shouldn't be on health span and the ability to live in a really healthy body until the day we die. So that's kind of my inroads into this world.
I like it. Well, I think we all have a potential. And, it's funny that all the different guests that I have, I always try to kind of find what got them here. And many, many times, a similar story to yours. Yours is the first I've heard with IBS, but I know people that have gone through IBS. It's brutal. And it's connected to the gut. It's connected to
Yeah.
nutrition. It's connected to all those things. Less than a year ago, I was diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer that almost took my life.
Oh
And
no.
so I got hit with this giant wake-up call. And the first doctor I went to see told me, he goes, well, you're so healthy. That giant tumor sticking out of your neck's probably not cancer. And I said, oh, good. And so that sent me down a bad road just by listening to a doctor and believing my body was going to fix itself instead of, really figuring it.
Wow.
But here I am. You wouldn't be able to tell, aside from my bald head, that anything might be off. And I dedicated all my energy to it. And now a big part of this podcast is about teaching people how to find their own answers. And that's part of what you're here for, is to
Yeah.
share the tools. It's not that what I did will help you the way it helped me, but if you go about it the way I did it and treat it the way I did, maybe you can find similar type answers.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think what you're tapping into is an element of what I teach quite a lot in my practice with my patients, just in general, is this concept of body literacy that a
Mhm.
lot of us are. And not to say that you weren't body literate, but perhaps had
Not
you.
like I am now.
Yeah, I was like, not had you known the nuances of how your body was feeling in that moment, or there's a lot that we rely on other people to tell us what's wrong or how to fix it. And I feel very impassioned that, with some cognizant awareness and practice, we can get very good at understanding on our own what our bodies need and how to get it. Whether it be from food or from, maybe we do then know, okay, I need outside help and sources for this, but body literacy is a big element of what I.
Well, a big part of my message is that, you are the medicine, and all the things that we put into the body unlock the medicinal powers that your body already has.
Yep.
And you're the teacher, you're the doctor. You have to advocate for your own health, because nobody feels what you feel. Nobody knows. Even if you have a good doctor who listens to you and you tell them everything you think of, you forgot something. But if you learn to pay attention to yourself and really take stock of, where am I today? How was I when I felt this way or that way? And really start paying attention, well, then all of a sudden you're like, you can get to a pretty good place pretty quick.
Yep, exactly. Well, I'm glad to hear you're hopefully on the other side of things, but
Oh yeah.
yeah,
You'll
good. I
see
mean,
where I
now,
was. You would,
what a strange gift, but a gift in and of
I
itself.
tell people that all the time. It's like the most crazy, unexpected, uh, unwanted to begin with, and I certainly wouldn't want to do it again. But what I've gotten from it, I would never take it back.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
built community, I've built understanding, I have an empathy that I never had. There's all these things that I can help people in a way that, I don't have any degrees, but I don't need them for what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. I'm
Yeah,
glad to hear it. We need more of us out in there.
exactly. And we come in all
Soldiers on the
shapes and
ground.
sizes. Exactly. I
Yeah.
love it. Well, so tell me about your practice and tell me about what you're doing today. Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber-only episodes that we offer to the supporters. And for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, I think I hit on some really important ones, but body literacy is a really big component of what I do. I intersect in the world of gut intuition, which I like to preface by talking about how we have a spiritual intuition that kind of is also lives in our gut, and when our gut isn't functioning properly, our intuition is not as easily, we can't read our body as well. So it loops into the body literacy that I teach, but it also, combines what I do with gut health and gut healing. So I work with a lot of patients that have, autoimmune conditions, anxiety, depression. Yeah, I work with a span of different people, but I would say most of it's helping to restore people's physical gut so that their gut intuition and their ability to make decisions that are healthy for them in the rest of their lives, whether that be with relationships, with career paths, things like that, are also aligned to what they want to do. Because a lot of what I was just having a wonderful conversation with a friend of mine yesterday about, when you start down a healing path, a lot of people do start, I think, with their body, with food or diet, and you start to heal this one element of your life, and then you realize, oh shoot, I'm actually really unhappy at my job, and that's been causing like such inflammation in my body and such, anxiety that's now impeding my ability to continue down this path, right?
Yeah.
You start to kind of have to cut through all of the different elements of your life that are not aligned or not serving you. So I work kind of at that juncture in people's lives where, your physical body and your and your life path are needing to meet at the center. And usually that begins in the gut for me and how I practice with my patients.
So, in looking through some of the notes that I have, I am very aware of, in the last 10 years or so, at least. I mean, it's been going on forever since the Back to Eden books or whatever, but um there have become these ways of eating that are touted as being very healing, and I see that you've touched on several of them. But the problem that I see is you have people from widely varying spectrums of influence, bringing out widely varying points and maybe having validity for certain groups. And I know people that are just adamant about the carnivore diet, and I know people that are adamant about the keto diet, and I know people. I see you got into fasting, mimicking, and fasting,
Yeah.
intermittent fasting, and that was a big part of my journey. That was instrumental in my way to health. And but I learned, for somebody who has cancer, the keto diet, which was pretty much where I was at, that took me from being 50 pounds overweight to a healthy point where my doctor thought I didn't have cancer with a giant lump sticking out of my neck, because I was just so darn healthy for a 58-year-old guy. Um, Told me that, you know, like you were saying, you can fix parts of your body dramatically while still leaving parts completely un, un
Unaligned,
unaligned
unhealthfully.
or
Mhm.
unserviced. And I learned, with dealing with cancer, that the plant-based diet is instrumental in um, in a healing journey, and combined with many different things. People think, oh, you can't have sugar, but it turns out if you eat whole fruit as a primary food source and you limit your protein dramatically, there's a huge thing that happens. And I know a guy who was a good friend of mine. I've known since high school, and he was in a bad injury and ended up, being very overweight. But he always worked out. He was a, gym rat, and even though his legs were all messed up, he'd always get out there and pump that iron. And eventually, he found this carnivore diet and
Mm,
kind of started out as a keto thing, and he switched over to the carnivore thing, and he lost a ton of weight. And he tried to hand that to me while I was dealing with my thing after I had already learned what I learned. I'm like, dude, it might work for you, but it's
mm,
definitely not for me. And, the keto thing helped me lose a lot of weight. I cut out all the sugar, I cut out all the bread, the carbs, and I ate a lot of, healthy fats and protein. And intermittent fasting was huge. We can get into that in a bit, but just the source of food. So tell me, where do you come from with that? It sounds like you're very strong into
my
the
gosh.
vegan side of things.
Yeah, no, this is you've touched on so many really important things. I will say before I dive into my thoughts on your comment is how emotionally tied people are to their food choices, and how
Oh man,
it's almost political,
that
like,
was one of the
people are.
hardest things I did was give up my meat and fish. I mean, I
Oh
even had
yeah.
a guy who told me what I needed to know months before I accepted it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, no, I know my
This is like a
body
part of
tells
my
me,
identity.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to give that up. And then when you learn the things you learn, you're like, well, what do you want?
Yeah. So I do like to preface it with that because I need people to check themselves sometimes when they get really emotionally tied to, like, oh, well, I'm not going to listen to this person anymore because they're saying things that I don't,
That was
fundamentally don't
me.
believe. But you bring up a good point. So from a longevity perspective, I really have, harnessed my line of work in the longevity space. And it's important to understand that longevity to me, because that word is thrown around all the time, like longevity, longevity. But what do
Not
you
a
mean?
number.
What I mean by longevity is that I want my body to be functioning at the best possible place when I am chronologically very old, right? Like I want my cells to be functioning younger than my chronological age. That's what I mean. That's going to be different than, being in a really chiseled, body that it can, has an 8-pack that might look different. It doesn't have to be different, but it might look different for somebody with different health goals. But so I need to be very clear about what I mean by that. But from a longevity perspective, there is a way of eating that has been studied and researched and has evidence behind it that supports cellular health and reducing your biological age, which is the age of your cells. And ultimately that is what health span is reducing the age of your cells. And that's going to be different than the age on your license or on your birth certificate, right? And that kind of composition is what we call the longevity diet, which is also, coined by Dr. Walter Longo. But plant forward eating, and I don't want to say plant-based because it doesn't mean that that animal products don't have a place in a healthy lifestyle, but the emphasis isn't on animals. So
100%.
Mostly in the United States, especially, or in Western culture, we have made animal products, meat, milk, yogurts, cheese, as the centerpiece of our plate when it really should be a supplement to our diet.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
So plant forward eating is really critical to living a long time. And part of that is twofold. One, the fiber component. Plant-based foods have a ton of fiber. And when we have fiber is the prebiotic food that are those gut microbes in our gut eat to keep them alive. And if we keep supplementing with probiotics, but then go and eat a carnivore diet and aren't feeding them fiber, you're basically planting flowers and letting them die outside. It doesn't help keep them alive. So fiber is critical. And our early human ancestors, the way that we evolved was by eating little bits of a lot of different plants. We used to consume
whatever we could find.
We used to consume upwards of 100 grams of fiber a day. Easily. That's how we evolved. And now most of us are struggling to get 20 grams of fiber a day from like the standard American diet. So that's the first key. But you brought up a really, really, and I'm happy I don't even have to convince you because you already know. But the other component to plant forward eating is staying below, and I'm going to try to explain this in a way that's not so heady, but when you are trying to keep your cells younger, but you want to make sure that the nutrient sensing pathways in your body, and we have 3 main nutrient sensing pathways in our body. We have IGF-1, mTOR, and PKA. And IGF-1 I think is probably the most popular. People probably know that one from eating carbohydrates and proteins and things. But if you don't trigger those pathways in your body, your cells will not grow. So basically those nutrient sensing pathways are growth pathways. And if you don't have anywhere for growth to go, and I'll give you an example. So let's say you're eating 150 grams of protein and all you're doing for workout is like briskly walking or you're not really growing your muscles at all. Eating 100 grams of protein, which will trigger the IGF-1 and mTOR pathways, the 2 of the nutrient sensing pathways in our body. If you eat all that protein and you don't have to grow anything, you're not growing muscles, you're not growing a brain, you're not doing any of that, you're still gonna grow something. And growth is going to age your cells faster. That's essentially what's happening here. So
a lot of cancer cells work with the mTOR pathway. That's the thing that I don't, journey, but that comes up all the time.
Yep. So I work. I'm not only the director of communications, but I'm a medical science educator at El Nutra, and El Nutra is a leading longevity science company, and we have upwards of 25 years of research and development, over 47 clinical trials, of which a third of those are, if not more, in human trials, looking all at these nutrient sensing pathways and their impact, specifically how fasting can impact them, but also how protein impacts them and glucose impacts them. But what we found time and time again is that animal sources of protein accelerate those nutrient sensing pathways faster than plant-based sources of protein, which is really important to note, because when you talk about low protein, it's important to remember, because that really triggers people. They're like, what do you mean? I'm not going to do low protein.
You go to the store and you see protein everywhere.
It's having a heyday right now,
Oh,
Joe.
yeah.
Whoa, everyone is eating way too much. But the story here is that you do need amino acids and protein for almost every single process in your body. So there is a reason why people are so obsessed with it. It is so important. It's almost right behind water. Protein is used for just about everything that our body needs. So there's a reason why it's important to have, and you need to get adequate sources of protein. But
your body recycles protein at an amazing rate. All those amino acids, they get taken apart, put back together.
Sure. Our body's highly resourceful, for sure. But if you're not utilizing it, right, it's going to go it's going to get stored on your body as fat. Mm-hmm. Or it's going to age your cells. And all of that is linked to higher disease risk, higher cancer risk, accelerated aging, which, again, all of which is what we're trying to avoid when we're talking about, living in a long, healthy body. So, plant-based proteins are a great place to be in this happy medium to help you get enough protein, but not to accelerate the aging pathway faster. Plant-based sources of proteins are incredible for that, and they also provide a ton of fiber. So plant-forward eating is one of the fundamental cornerstones of living a long and healthy life and actually preventing disease.
I couldn't agree more. Well, this is a spot where I recognize that we have a lot more we could talk about.
Forever.
I would like to invite you to come back and continue this conversation.
I would love to.
We didn't talk about water. We didn't talk about fasting. We didn't talk about so many things. But I would like to learn a little more about L-Nutra and just how that works.
Sure. So one of the pillars of the longevity zones, the blue zones around the world, is the fact that they all fast. They all follow yearly periodic fasting. And our founder, Dr. Walter Longo, is the godfather of this space. He was an oncology researcher for many years and was studying cancer patients, actually, and researching cancer patients, and had found, over almost 30 years ago now, that those who fasted in and around chemotherapy actually did better with chemotherapy. Like, the chemotherapy worked better in their body, and also they recovered faster after chemotherapy.
Preaching my gospel. That's 2 days before, 1 day after. There's published papers all over the place.
Yep.
Living proof.
Yep. And he actually has since, founded a nonprofit organization specifically on cancer. So he knows this very well. But one of his research questions at the time, and this is why L-Nutra was born, is that, oncology patients tend to be, they're the most immunocompromised of our population, and they already struggle to eat. A lot of them struggle to eat, and you're not, there also is this balance of, we don't want them to fast. We are already struggling to get enough food. Like, we don't want you to also avoid and fast, and that's also not good. So he had this research question. He's like, okay, we know the power of fasting. This is clear. But for our most immunocompromised people, what are we going to do for them? How can we make sure that they get the benefits of autophagy, which is that cellular rejuvenation that happens during fasting that's so powerful? How can we help them activate that pathway without avoiding food altogether? So in came the fasting mimicking diet, which is essentially it's a 5-day program that it took us many years to figure this out, but there's a very precise ratio of macro to micronutrients that is enveloped within the program. So each day is a very specific, unique amount of macronutrients. So you get to eat food, but it stays below those nutrient sensing pathways that we talked about before.
Yep.
So that you still activate autophagy on day
Right.
3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Beautiful.
But you'd get food and you get nourished. And so it's a lot easier and safer for most people, because water fasting is not necessarily safe for everybody. You still get all of this incredible, for most people, they do enter a state of ketosis. Autophagy happens whether you do or not, but there's a million different benefits of doing this program. And it's only 5 days to do. I mean, obviously the research that we've done here at L-Nutra is always looking at multiple cycles. So most of our research is looking at people doing this 3 cycles over the course of 3 months. So it's not like you're going to see, obviously you'll see benefits after 1 cycle, but the benefits compound the more that you do it.
Every practice change, it takes a minute
Exactly.
before your body shows you what it did.
And it takes a second. I mean, especially for us adults, like we have a lot of toxins and sludge and things that we have. It's hard to work all that out in 1 cycle, but you can over time.
Sure.
But essentially, now L-Nutra has two different arms. We have the main fasting mimicking diet, Prolon, that most people know and love, that's been on the commercial market for the past 9 years, almost 10 years.
Right.
That you can purchase on your own. People use it for weight loss, for metabolic health. It's wonderful for helping to, reset your relationship with food too. There's lots of anecdotal evidence to support that, decrease sugar cravings and improve self-confidence and all these really incredible things. And we've since about almost a year and a half ago, we finally launched our medical division, which doesn't just use the fasting mimicking diet, but it also incorporates medical nutrition therapy. So regular work with longevity dietitians, medical oversight for people who are on medications. It helps to, if you're on diabetes medications, heart, cholesterol, blood pressure medications, we help to monitor that, even help to reduce medications over time, include laboratory reviews. So they're comprehensive programs that are helping to address specifically metabolic conditions, but down the pipeline, we're working on cancer too. We're launching our cancer program here in the next few years. So we're busy. We're busy.
Love it. Well,
yeah.
It's been amazing hearing about this, the fact that the things that you're talking about are things I discovered,
on your own,
that worked for me. And
yeah.
I tell people about these things all the time, and all I have is, what I used to be, and I can show you what I am now and get people to take me for.
You're a walking proof. It's
Exactly.
incredible.
Well, Melanie, I would love to definitely continue this conversation in the future. As always, I'd like to give you a chance to let people know how they can reach you, and any final parting shot you want to share with us.
Yeah, sure. If any of you are interested in learning about the fasting mimicking diet, which is truly something magical and science-backed and incredible, you can visit prolonlife.com, which is PROLONLIFE.com. You can look at the fasting mimicking diet there. You can follow us at Prolon on Instagram, Facebook, and all over. If you're looking for me personally, I'm on Instagram at Health and Melness, HEALTHNMELLNESS. And I like to, it's not salesy over there. It's a lot of education, empowerment, and lots of tools and tips for living your best and most optimized life.
Wonderful. Well, I thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your wisdom. And this has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and we thank you for your support, and we will see you next time. This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.